On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, just what has gotten into the Toronto Raptors defense to make it this good? Plus, we're sniffing that Brandon Ingram rumor, baby.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, January the 29th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I cover the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also find the show on Instagram, and you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, the best way to not do work tasks throughout the day and instead talk about the Toronto Raptors with sickos just like you who want to talk about the Toronto Raptors instead of doing work tasks. It's great. It's also free. You can also subscribe for free to the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. You get the QR code on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can go to the link in the description of the podcast. If you're listening, if you sign on up or drop your email on the line, you will get fresh emails 5 days a week from yours truly. You also get Katie Heindel in there with national perspectives on the league with her beautiful writing. You get Michael Shearer every Thursday with basketball poetry, Josh Lloyd fantasy tips, and it's all for the low, low price of On the House. So subscribe, wouldn't you? Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And we are off and running here where we're talking defense. That's right. The Toronto Raptors boast the number one defense in the NBA over a gigantic 7-game sample here as they've gone 6-1 in their last 7. And here to talk about what the hell has gotten into this defense, what has changed, if anything, can it sustain the way it has, what's all gone into it with Scottie Barnes making the defensive leap, and all that. Plus, we're going to talk about some Brandon Ingram slop a little bit later on. It is Es Baraheni from the Athletic NBA Daily, from Raptors 905 games, from your damn television everywhere. He's all over the place. Es, how's it going, brother?
Hello, my friend. Yeah, I'm excited. Let's talk about the Raptors who are playing some good basketball. Last time I came on here, they were not playing good basketball. And so I'm excited to talk about good basketball with you.
It's very nice. I'm going to enjoy it while we can. The team building ramifications will come within this very show, of course, because you cannot ignore the transaction industrial complex that keeps us all fed. But let's start off here and actually talk about some good basketball. The defense has been fantastic in this stretch. Again, they are the number one defense in basketball over the last 7 games. You have them giving up, look, we can get into this. How much is it luck-based? How much is it not luck-based? I do think there is a little bit of luck here when you look at the profile under the hood. Their opponents right now are shooting 57.6% at the rim against the Raptors. That's the third best rim defense in this stretch for any team. The Raptors, for the most part this season, have been kind of a crappy rim defense team in terms of shots allowed and the accuracy of those shots allowed going in. They're also giving up just 27.3% from the corners, which is very intense three-point variance. They've always been good at suppressing corner threes. That's been kind of the feature of their defense this year for the most part, but giving up 27.3% over any stretch is a hint that maybe things are going to come crashing back at some point. That said, you got Davion Mitchell defending his ass off. You gave him some love yesterday on your socials for what he's been doing to kind of guide and spearhead the defense. Scottie Barnes, we'll talk about it, is playing at a pretty ridiculous clip defensively as well. Jakob has tidied things up after a rough start, and even RJ Barrett's given a damn. Is this sustainable to you, S? And what do you think has gone into this run of the defense totally flipping itself on its head and becoming damn good for a little stretch here?
Is it sustainable to be the number one defense and allow 105 points per 100 possessions? No. I don't think so.
Come on.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
That's crazy. And you talk about some of the opponents shooting, definitely part of the fact that they had another stretch in late November where they were like a top 10 defense. And a lot of that was because of opponent shooting. I think teams were shooting like 32% from 3, something along the lines of that. So the Raptors give up a ton of threes. That's been their MO this season as well, in terms of, basically having a lot of lapses on the perimeter that lead to tons of rotations. And because they're not that kind of succinct and kind of locked in defensively as a group, there's tons of like missed rotations, open gaps, and all that type of stuff. That hasn't been the case over the last couple of weeks. And I think the reason for that, there's 2 reasons, really. One, Davion Mitchell has started in 7 games.
Mhm.
And it's a 7-game stretch where they've been able to play good basketball. Their whole MO, you were there on media day. You saw what Darko Rajakovic said. They want the most important guy to be guarding the ball. And
Mhm.
for most of this season, that guy has been failing. Like that, they just did not guard the ball well. Guys like Grady Dick were kind of getting beat off the dribble. RJ Barrett was getting beat off the dribble or hunted around screens. You had Scottie Barnes even playing out of position and playing too aggressively. Guys like Jamal Shad, Jacoby Walter, rookies who are still trying to figure things out. The only guy really who could be the guy on ball is Davion.
Mhm.
And I think he's just been such an important part to their defense, especially with that starting group. He comes in, he immediately stonewalls drives. He immediately makes it really hard for any opposing ball handler to get up the court because he's always pressing them. And so most opposing offenses, like they start their actions with like 14 seconds left on the clock. And so
Mhm.
now you have this kind of scramble scenario where you're forcing guys into tough shots. And that really creates a good environment for Scottie Barnes. It creates a good environment for Jakob, who are long dudes who can clean things up elsewhere. So it's just been this combination of good point of attack defense from Davion. I think Ochai can do that to a certain extent too. And then you have that spillover kind of cleanup garbage man type of situation with Scotty and Jakob, and they do it really, really well at a high level. So it's working. Like the defense that Darko wanted to instill is finally working because they have the pieces to do so.
For sure. Another note, too, they've gotten better on the defensive glass. They were kind of a bad defensive rebounding team for much of this season. They've been the 7th best defensive rebounding team over the course of these games as well. What does that mean? It's a tiny sample. All of this is a tiny sample. It's hard to
Yeah.
derive any real meaning from it. But, Scottie Barnes, Jakob, 2 damn good rebounders. Grady Dick's been mixing it up on the glass a little bit more often. I think he had 6 rebounds in the last game. Like, you're getting some contributions from more than just the 2 guys who are good at rebounding. And Kelly Olynyk's missed a few games here as well, which probably helps a little with the defensive rebounding department on top of that. The thing is, like, this is not going to be what the starters are forever, right? And I think the sort of question here that sort of hangs over all of this is how achievable is any kind of balance for this team with the sort of lack of clear two-way guys they have.
Yeah.
And when Immanuel Quickley comes back, which I assume he's coming back at some point, he's starting over Davion Mitchell, obviously. Like, you're not starting Davion over your $35 million point guard. And, there are going to be some benefits from that, right? The Raptors in this stretch are 21st in offense. Their offense is not very good. And Davion Mitchell being on the floor is a big part of that. Like, he's great at defense. The offensive stuff from him, teams don't care about him when he has the ball in his hands, as they probably shouldn't. When the threes go in, it's great. It's found money, but the threes don't always go in. And so when you bring Quickley back, you would think that's going to bring the offense up a little bit, even though the numbers this season haven't been great. I believe over a longer sample, having his pull-up shooting is going to make the offense better. Having his creation is going to make the offense better. But what kind of drop-off will there be? Like, is there stuff? I guess my question here is there stuff beyond Davion Mitchell going on here that you think can make this defensive structure hold up at least a little bit? Maybe not to the same degree it has right now. Maybe not even to like a top 10 degree, but enough to reap the benefits of the offense getting better once Quickley is back? Or is it going to be a situation where they have to be offense first and the defense lags just because there's just not a whole lot of talent to spread around?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think it will be sustainable once Quickley comes back. And that's not a knock on Quickley. He has to be in a really good team environment defensively to be able to harp on the things that he's good at on the defensive end. Like, he's a great team defender, so he's good at springing into rotations, kind of staying locked in and knowing where he has to go, X outs and all that type of stuff. But he's not necessarily like your let's get a stop type of guy like Davion is. And so your defensive infrastructure, especially at the point of attack, changes because now you have Quickley, you have Grady, you have RJ, who are typically on the perimeter. And those 3 guys are guys who either are going to get hunted out in certain situations, or if you're running them off of screens constantly, they have a tendency off ball to kind of lose their guy. And so I think there will be a defensive drop off. And I don't necessarily know if that's by design. I think the Raptors would like for Grady Dick to improve defensively. I think he's had some moments here where he's been impressive. I think maybe even last time I was on this pod, he had that game against Denver where
Mhm.
he got the block shot. He was making a bunch of steals. Like, he was using his length, which I think
Yep.
is the way Grady wins defensively. RJ has been trying more, which you mentioned off the top. And I think that's an important part of this. Like, 50% of defense's effort. So
Yep.
putting in the effort there is going to help generally. But I don't think that they would be a good defensive team anymore. I'd be lying to myself if I said that, like, I believe that defensive consistency would stay. I know some people would probably suggest, like, okay, well, then maybe they should not start one of Grady or RJ and have, Davion in there with IQ. And that kind of gets tricky, because then the offensive fit starts to get wonky. You don't have the floor spacing ability, although Quickley is a good 3-point shooter. You don't have the creation ability. You know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah.
that's where it becomes an issue. And so, to your point, yes, it's tough to not have tons of two-way players on this team, but I also think it's a team that's trying to develop those two-way players. You think of, like, Jakob Walter, who will eventually, hopefully be in the rotation and be that guy for them. Jamal Shed, who's shown some offensive craft, knocking down shots now. You know what I mean? So, like, they're hoping these guys can eventually become those two-way players. They're just not there yet.
Yeah, I'm with you for sure. And, the idea of like a Mitchell Quickley backcourt, like, I think there will be certainly moments where they can pull that out. It's a little small, but certain matchups, close some games with it. Totally.
Yeah, they could
I can
close
see
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're also more invested in Grady Dick and RJ Barrett than they are in Davion Mitchell right now. We'll see if they keep Mitchell around. I have my doubts that's going to happen. And I would not be surprised at all if he's moved between now and next Thursday.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, this is just going to be a team where trade-offs are had until they upgrade the overall two-way play of the roster, and that's just the way it is. But for now, it's pretty awesome what they're doing. And I guess the question becomes, if Mitchell's not in the starting five, just how much can Scottie Barnes support on his massively broad shoulders defensively, right? Because he has been fantastic. And if you ask Darko Rajakovic, he's been all defense worthy. We're going to get into Scottie Barnes, his all defense case, and what kind of floor he can provide this team alone, and how that changes the team building stuff around him. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by friends over at GameTime, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events you want to go to. And look, right now, Raptors tickets kind of reasonably affordable if you go to GameTime. That's pretty cool. The Raptors are not very good. The tickets for the Pelicans game, you can get lower bowls for like $90. That's pretty rare in these parts. And so, yeah, they're playing the Bulls on Friday. They got plenty of home games left to go. Maybe you can go find your tickets on GameTime. And with GameTime picks, they are going to help you find the tickets that you want to buy, for the seats you want to sit in, for the prices that you want to pay. They filter out the fluff, show you only the best deals on great seats as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back at it here with our pal Es Baraheni from the Athletic NBA Daily, talking about the Raptors defense, which right now is very much, Scottie Barnes' gigantic handprints are all over what's going on right now. He's been awesome. I've said it on this show. His defensive leap has kind of gone slept on because the Raptors are bad and the defense is not very good, but it has been one of, if not the most sort of single most impressive year-over-year skill improvement that I think we've seen from him as a pro. It's been awesome to see him put it all together. The on-ball stuff, the off-ball stuff, the just sort of general presence of, this guy's swallowing up possessions and ruining other teams' days. It's been a delight to behold. And as Darko Rajakovic talked about before the game Monday, there is, in terms of like the individual stuff he's doing, not so much the team context or the broader success of the team, but what he's doing individually. He is playing all defense, level defense. Do you agree with Darko Rajakovic here, S? Obviously, the team context is going to come in. It's probably going to prevent him from actually getting votes and making an all-defense team, barring some incredible run down the stretch. 41-41, baby. It's on the table. Just got to go 27-9 to finish. We'll see how that all shakes out. But just in terms of his individual play, do you agree with Darko? Is he an all-defense level guy?
First of all, I just realized that you said it would be 27-9 to get to 41-41, which is wild. I mean,
easy going. Nothing.
You believe? Yeah. I mean, look, given their schedule, it isn't crazy.
I'm saying there's a lot of Wizards. There's a lot of
Wizards.
Jazz.
There's a lot of Utah. Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
lot of
A
Utah,
lot of
and a lot of
Hornets.
Wizards, a lot of Hornets.
Mhm.
It's going to be a pretty weird schedule moving forward. Okay, so on Scotty, I think he's been incredible, especially this last month. I think he is absolutely worthy of an all-defense spot. I think last year, especially for the first little bit of the season when he became an all-star, you could have said that he was worthy of an all-defense spot. It's tough because there's only two teams and two all-defense teams, I mean. And so 10 guys mostly get rewarded by winning, mostly get rewarded by narrative. And I think it becomes a situation where, the Raptors aren't winning basketball. They're not competing, until recently. And it makes it harder for Scotty to have a case. That being said, if they end up going 27-9, they go 41-41, and it's off the back of their defense, and Scotty is playing all defense level basketball, then I think that changes. And you're probably looking at Scotty becoming an all defense level player. Maybe he ends up getting, one of the final all-star spots. Who knows? But I think generally the thing that makes Scotty so elite is that he's so good at using his length, both off ball and on ball. I think he's gotten better on ball at realizing he can provide a little bit more space and doesn't have to press up as much, so he can use his length to recover. Like there was a situation against the Pels where he got beat off the dribble in transition against DeJounte Murray, just turned around, boom, off the glass, he pinned it. There's been multiple situations like that over the last couple weeks. I think there was one against Zion where he tried to do it, but Grady stepped in and tried to set a charge, but it was a blocking foul, and he had already pinned Zion, and he's like, damn, why did Grady step in there? So he's getting better at using his length to recover, which I think is a really important part for him moving forward defensively, because like his hips aren't the quickest. He can't move them as fast. And so he will get beat off the dribble, but he's learning how to recover and use that space to be able to kind of like spatially get a stop. But off ball is where he's like awesome. Off ball is where his length and activity is incredible. It works incredibly well with Jakob Poeltl too. I know people are very wary about the fit offensively. I actually think the fit is pretty good offensively, but defensively, they're locking in. And I think the way that they're funneling teams to the basket, you talked about the rim percentage earlier in this pod. I think a big part of that is the combination of Scotty and Jakob defending at the rim, stonewalling guys at the rim, and making it harder for them to finish at the basket. That being said, I think like the reason you've seen Scotty's defense over the last month really pop off is because, again, the infrastructure at the point of attack is better. So it makes it easier for him to be in positions to win on the defensive end. If for some reason that doesn't, Davion gets traded or something along the lines of Quickley coming back, and so your point of attack defense isn't there, you're probably asking Scotty to be out of position more often defensively. And so it'll lead to a worse all defense case. It'll lead to more lapses defensively and for this team to fall off defensively. So it's like maximizing a dude like that on the defensive end is the way to go. Like you think of Giannis with the Bucks. His greatest skill set isn't one-on-one defense where he's guarding the best player on a given night. Yeah, he can do that for possessions at a time, but his real skill is when you funnel guys to him at the rim and he just stuffs them. So it's like finding ways to get Scotty to be at his best defensively, which I think is generally where the Raptors need to go team building wise, but that's a different conversation for another day.
No doubt. I mean, another segment. We'll get into some team stuff coming up in just a second here. But it's the idea of like for Scotty right now, it's way easier to clean up just one mess on aisle 5 as opposed to, oh no, there's a mess in aisle 2 and aisle 6 and aisle 7 and aisle 9 and also in the vegetable section, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's he's incredible. He's been tons of fun, and like he's giving them a floor, right? Which is really impressive. Like that's the sort of the last step for any great defender is like, can their just presence on the floor make them into a passable defense? And right now, his 111.1 on-court defensive rating would have the Raptors ranked 8th in the NBA in defense over the course of the full season. Like this encompasses all of the early crap the team threw out there defensively. In Scottie Barnes' minutes when he's on the floor, they are more than competent, and that is really encouraging. You kind of alluded a little bit to sort of what I'm about to ask you here, scheme-wise, how to best deploy Scottie Barnes. I do think because he's made that step as a perimeter defender, a guy who can kind of hang with guards and wings. There's maybe a little more flexibility as far as like how you build this team out. And, I think maybe the sort of go-to sort of type of player would have been like a Herb Jones, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, like a wing who just can go and guard the best team's wings and have Scotty
or an OG Anunoby.
Or perhaps an OG Anunoby. Yeah, some guy of that milieu would have been the ideal fit. But I also think there's maybe some room for, and this maybe takes him out of where he's absolutely at his best, but maybe you just kind of go super big and target someone who's a little more sort of stretch four coated and has a bit more of rim protection of their own. I know a lot of people in the Locked On Raptors Discord right now are big fans of Jabari Smith Jr. and the idea that the Rockets aren't going to be able to pay him. And I think because Scotty has more of that perimeter juice, like maybe that opens that up as more of a, so you can kind of lean bigger with what you do to sort of build the defense around him. But what's your like ideal scheme for Scotty, the way he's playing, the way he does? Is it just kind of like trying to replicate what the Bucks do, where you just kind of destroy everything at the rim and live with everything else?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Be a little bit more conservative. They're pretty conservative right now. They change things up with their aggression level at the point of attack when they have better defenders at the point of attack there, but they typically are pretty conservative when they're funneling guys to Jakob and Scotty to clean things up, and then they try to use their length off ball to cause deflections and get steals and get out and running and all that type of stuff. And I think that's the scheme that the Raptors should try to implement and kind of lock down. Locked on, I guess. There you go. No pun intended. But I think generally that's probably what they should do. I love the Jabari Smith Jr. fit. Like, I think that would be really cool, not only because of the defensive side of the ball, but I think as a stretch five offensively would be really fun. And like certain lineups you can put him into, which, would be great with Scotty, kind of pairing him up as like a 4-5 pick and roll. And you could still play Jakob and have those three be your front court. I could see the vision there. I just don't know what it would take to grab him. I think it probably would require that 2026 Indiana first, probably maybe more than that. Ultimately, I'm not sure. But yeah, and you'd also have to pay him, and that means what do you do with RJ Barrett, all that type of stuff. Anyways, I think that's like the type of player that could make sense if you want to go bigger. And, I think the other aspect is like you could also consider like smaller, great defenders, again, like of the mold of like a Drew Holiday. I'm thinking about the Bucks right now, but like of the mold of a Drew Holiday, building era.
VJ Edgecombe.
Yeah, VJ Edgecombe. Yeah, absolutely. Like that type of like solid, sturdy defender at the point of attack. I think, this is a side, but like Jacoby Walter could end up being that. He has shown some flashes defensively that I think makes me excited for what his eventual defensive ceiling could be. He's long. Yeah. He has like a 6'10" wingspan. And I think he can use that length in a lot of different ways. He just has to get stronger. Great feet too. Absolutely. And he's great at tracking the ball off ball too. So I think there's something there, to him being that next guy for them defensively, but that's kind of a ways away, So
no doubt. Yeah. He's a very young green fellow. It'll take some time for sure, as it always does. It's fun to watch this team play defense right now. It's really cool. I'm really enjoying not watching them just kind of hemorrhage everything. And the board, we got to get ourselves a counter of like days since RJ Barrett got back cut embarrassingly. We're at like 12 days now, probably. Like, it's great. We'll keep track of that board for sure. We'll come back into the side here, S, and we've been talking team building a little bit. There was some rumor mill crap yesterday, slop, as our pals at Ball would call it. We've got Brandon Ingram stuff from Marc Stein. Brandon Ingram? Really? We'll get into that coming up in just one sec. Wrapping it up here with our pal Es Baraheni from the Athletic NBA Daily. Brandon Ingram. Yesterday there was some reporting from Marc Stein in his Substack newsletter, which is a great sub if you go and subscribe to that. He kind of look. This is where you need to have your smell test going, right? What's that? Is that real? Is that smoke? Is that nothing?
Yep.
Here's some good ASMR for you. There's all kinds of stuff that flies around this time of year. You got to realize like there's agendas for everything, all kinds of subterfuge going on. Yep. And I think people ran away with this one a little quickly, maybe because it's a paywalled article and not everybody read the entire article. But I read the entire article because I pay for good journalism. And so my subscribe to The Athletic, by the way. Hey, yes. And so
thank you.
my sort of read on this from Marc Stein. Essentially, he kind of lays out stuff we already know. Jake Fisher's reporting about the Raptors being kind of all part of all sorts of conversations with Bruce Brown and their expiring guys, all that stuff we know. Michael Grange's piece from last week, kind of echoing a lot of that, and also with that sort of line of the Raptors are still looking for a piece to pair with Scottie Barnes.
Right.
And I think Marc Stein took those two things and a little bit of noise about Brandon Ingram and some potential Raptors interest or whatever, and just kind of was like, maybe he's the guy for the Raptors. I think there was a lot of inference in there if you read the entire piece. To me, the Brandon Ingram to the Raptors thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for a lot of reasons. I think financially, obviously, he's coming up and needs a new deal this year, and he's very much in that Pascal Siakam tier of guy where you don't really probably want to pay him a max contract. And I think Pascal kind of got paid at the right time with the CBA, where I think those types of deals for that level of player just not going to be there going into the future now. Brandon Ingram's on the wrong side of that. So you're probably not paying him a max, but you're paying him a lot of money. And that has to be sort of factored into your calculus. You have Immanuel Quickley on the books. You have Scottie Barnes on the max next year. If he makes all defense, he's on the 30% max, by the way, which I don't think will happen, but still it's on the table if they go 41-41, as has been written. And so, yeah, it just, the financials of it all are pretty tough. What is your read on Brandon Ingram as a potential fit? How would you go about doing it if you were, in fact, a get Brandon Ingram on this team guy, which your handle on the screen,
I'm a denier.
Brandon Ingram denier suggests you are not in on that idea, but just give me your read on this rumor and the potential fit. Does this pass the smell test for you?
It doesn't, and I agree for a lot of the same reasons you said. I don't think it makes sense. I think if you look at Brandon Ingram, who's basically almost 28 years old, hasn't played more than 65 games in a single season other than his rookie year, has tons of injury issues, basically has dealt with injuries every single season of his career other than his rookie year. And I think you look at a guy who is looking for max money. And so if you're saying, well, the Raptors are using this to get off of any of their bad contracts, if you want to label them bad contracts, right? If you want to say like they want to get out of the Immanuel Quickley business, or they want to get out of the RJ Barrett business. Okay, sure. But then you got to pay Brandon Ingram, right? And so you're, like you alluded to just now, you're on the other side going to have to make another poor decision and sign a bad contract with another guy. So it's like, I don't know. That seems like flawed logic to me, unless you are extremely high on the Brandon Ingram, Scottie Barnes fit, to which I say, like, yeah, you could see it work. You could see Ingram being in certain sets and make things work as a ball handler, whatnot, but he's not a great pull-up shooter. Actually, he's a very hesitant pull-up shooter, not a three-point shooter whatsoever. I think that's something Pelicans fans have been generally annoyed with, the fact that he settles into mid-range shots more than he does three-point shots. And so that fit becomes wonky. So from that perspective, I just don't understand it for the Toronto Raptors. To your point about kind of connecting the dots, maybe the Raptors are willing to be facilitators in a Brandon Ingram trade, similar to what they're trying to do with Jimmy Butler. I think the Raptors are at a point, especially with the amount of expiring salaries that they have, basically between Davion, Boucher, and Bruce Brown, they have almost $40 million in expiring salary. I think they're trying to use that to try and get involved in these trades in some way, shape, or form. So if there's a team that's trying to take Brandon Ingram and wants to trade for him, but maybe on the other side has contracts that the Pelicans do not want, then hey, Bruce Brown,
over, baby.
Chris
Send
Boucher, sure. Let's say like the Utah Jazz are interested in Brandon Ingram. They've been reported to want him, but they want to get off of John Collins's contract, right? They want to, maybe they want to get off of Colin Sexton's deal, and they want to move, so it's like, all right, cool. John Colin Sexton, come on down. We'll shift him over. You get a first round pick, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I'm just kind of like spitballing here. I don't have the exact numbers and salary, but something along the lines of that would make more sense to me than actually trading for Brandon Ingram, who, for the reasons we just mentioned, just doesn't make sense for the Raptors.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if you want to tell me, like in a vacuum, Brandon Ingram's a better player than RJ Barrett and even a better fit with Scottie Barnes than RJ Barrett, I can hear you. Like, but we don't live in a vacuum. We live in the contractual world that the NBA has created for us, this very fun world where everything is great. And we live in a world where the injury thing matters. And like, it feels like it doesn't quite move the needle enough for me to sort of take on all the baggage that would come with that.
Yeah.
And also just like to the logical flaws of it all. If they were not willing to keep Pascal Siakam around to play with Scottie Barnes, who I think is a better player than Brandon Ingram and is way more durable than Brandon Ingram, like it does not at all pass the smell test to me that Brandon Ingram would then be the guy that go around and pay a year later. Like that doesn't make any sense to me at all. If they really needed like that sort of tier of guy with Scottie Barnes, they would have just kept Pascal Siakam around. I think they have higher ambitions. And look, you look around the league, De'Aaron Fox news yesterday. We know Jimmy Butler. I do think we've kind of had this stretch here where there's been some stasis with how teams are built just because of the salary implications of everything and how hard it is for deals to be made. I think over the next 18 months, we're going to get like this like trade constipation backup is going to break free at some point. Sorry for the visceral analogy, but like there's going to be some guys who shake loose, and the Raptors are in a position, that not many teams are in. There are like 7 teams in the NBA that have all their picks in hand. They also have the Pacers pick on top of that. Whatever they get at the deadline this year, they have the Blazers pick in the second round this summer. Like they actually have a per pick surplus, which not most teams have. And they're going to be a position here where there could be more guys who shake loose and are available than there are teams willing to trade for them. And they can hop in there, and those guys might just be better fits than Brandon Ingram long-term. And so I'm not, I'm keeping my powder dry for someone better than Brandon Ingram without all of the sort of extra stuff that comes with that situation.
And like RJ, if you're really thinking it's like an RJ for Ingram swap, there is probably better out there. Like RJ's contract, which is $27 million next year and then $29 million the year after that. That is something that you can eventually use in trades moving forward as well, packaged into different deals to maybe go after an actual star or a guy that you think could really pair well with Scottie Barnes. So I agree with you. Keep that powder dry.
RJ plus stuff is the path here, especially if the 41 and 41 prophecy takes place and they're not drafting at the top of this draft. It's so lastly, we'll kind of go out here. Any like grand hopes, dreams, visions for the deadline? We're 7-8 days away now. Like, is there anything you're hoping to see? Anything you're expecting to see? Do you want to see them trade the vets, or you want to see them ride this thing out and push for 41 and 41, baby?
I think they will trade the vets, even if they maybe are hesitant to do so. I think they will, because I think not only from like a value perspective and get what you can for these guys perspective, but they want to open up minutes for some of their younger guys to play towards the end of the season. Jonathan Mobo has been playing extended run in the 905. He showed to start the year that he can actually play and impact winning in certain levels. So he's been putting in some moments. Me and you, we're big Mobo guys. I think the same thing applies to Jacoby Walter. I know they'll want Jamal Shed to have more minutes, maybe some minutes for Ulrich Champche, dare I say. So, there are guys who probably want to get some run towards the end of the season. And I think that just means looking at Boucher, Kelly, Davion, Bruce as, that's 4 for 4 basically right there. And moving some of those guys to open up minutes for them. I think that's the way that they would want to go in this season of development and value, like obviously getting that. So I think that's part of it. I also I wouldn't be totally mad at a slight buy move if it's for a younger player that you think you want to add to this core moving forward. If it's for Jabari Smith Jr., yes. If it's for someone else that you think in that realm of like, hey, let's buy low on a candidate that's not going to get paid on his team, makes sense to me. Sure, let's do it. But if it's for Brandon Ingram, who's 28, kind of doesn't really work age-wise for this group either, I don't think it necessarily makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Very, very quickly, just one word answer. Over under, I said it at 2.5 of the 4 vets that we've talked about getting traded by next week. What you got, over or under?
Over.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. I think I might take a slight under. I might say it's 2 of the 4, but I have no idea, man. Things are going to get weird.
Who do you think is
weird?
Let me. Can I throw a question back at you?
Yeah.
Who do you think is the least likely of the 4 to get traded?
Kelly?
I would probably say Kelly too.
Probably not getting more than like a second rounder for him, and they could probably get as much or more next year. And he's helpful and doesn't look dead, which is nice.
Yeah, he's been
Bruce is a close second, because I think just he makes a lot of money and it's hard to make work.
It's hard
unless
to
he's
move
part of
around.
a Jimmy trade, right? Like he's
yeah.
part of a Jimmy trade, sure, but beyond that, I don't really see the fit anywhere. We'll see. But Es, man, thank you so much for jumping on. Appreciate you taking the time, pal. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, listen to the Athletic NBA Daily. We talk about all of the NBA. We've been talking about the Raptors more recently because they've been winning. Congratulations to that. But yeah, listen to the Athletic NBA Daily. Appreciate you as always, Sean. Thank you very much.
Of course, buddy. All right, we will leave it there. Thank you so much. Follow, subscribe, rate, review. Go to the newsletter, subscribe. It's free. It's good.
Yeah.
It's great. I wrote about junk food on Monday. You want to hear me talk about how much I eat Crunchwrap Supremes? You can do that. That's in the newsletter, baby.
Chicken or beef?
Always beef. Come on.
Okay, good. All right, good. Yeah.
Although there is a local place here in Hamilton that makes a chicken one, and I had it last night for dinner. It was great.
Nice.
So if you're gonna put a bunch of stuff inside a wrap and make it crunchy and delicious, I'm gonna eat it. It's just kind of where we're at.
Good point.
Either way, thanks so much. Shout out Amigos in Hamilton. Woohoo! Basically Taco Bell, but a little more expensive. We will leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll talk to you again talking about Raptors Wizards. They're gonna keep on streaking, methinks. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Oh, bank's open, baby.